And this is a discussion about Teilhard de Chardin. And I'm just reading Dana's comment in the chat. I just want to say I've always loved Teilhard de Chardin and was excited. And what's really exciting about this presentation is the applications. What can we use the Teilhard wisdom for? And that's just a broad interpretation. I would like to introduce Annie Spade, and I have known Annie for about 3 years now, and it's just been a joy. Annie has been a Montessori teacher running her own school, and she's taught 2 to 6 year olds, just shaping these young people's lives. And she certainly taught me a lot about how children look at the world and what it means, what Montessori education means, and also about Teilhard, whom I'd never heard about before I started a deep time leadership course. So Annie, having said that, I'm going to hand over to you, and you can introduce Matt, because I think you'll do a lot more justice to that introduction than I will. And welcome, Matt.
Well, thank you so much, Hasina, and thank you for inviting this conversation today. And I'm just really thrilled to have an opportunity for everyone here. And I don't know, we're up to 19 participants, and I really would like for everyone to be considering how Teilhard's vision has inspired you in your life, and just what you've observed in terms of his influence in our world today, because I think it's profound, and I think World Unity Week is a huge part of it. So I'll say more about that in a minute. I'm really excited for Matt Landry to be here. I always know Matt's going to keep us on track. His credentials are extensive and many in terms of having both taught orally about Teilhard, and he writes a couple of blogs on Teilhard for years now, and surely this is going to be a book one day, Matt. But he's an admin on our Teilhard de Chardin Facebook group page, where we have now over 11,000 members throughout the world. Just a couple of years ago, it was about 500 of us, and we've exploded to that many and growing every day. So just really grateful to Matt for being here also with me, and Jeff Laporte and Tex Albert and Viola Olson, a number of us, Charles Wilkinson, who are very active with the group. I'd like to just start for a moment and just center us in the connection field. It's been really powerful here with World Unity Week. We're now, day 6, and just every one of the presentations that I've been to, there's been some sense of connecting with one another. And we know Teilhard, he felt that noospheric power that was emerging on the planet that would be fueled by technology. We kind of sometimes think about the web as the World Wide Web as, noosphere with a little n, but it's definitely fueling a spiritual awakening and connection really on every level. And so I'd just like to invite us to have a soft gaze or close our eyes for a moment. And one of the indigenous elders yesterday spoke about the 4 sacred elements. And we know, Teilhard knew, and we know even more so today, that every atom in our bodies is made of the elements of the stars. We are mineral and water air and fire, and all things, not only we, but everything that surrounds us, everything living and non-living, everything is made of the same sacred fabric of life. And as we breathe air in and out, continually through our lives and our hearts, pump the water, the blood through our bodies, we are becoming, ever becoming, and what this evokes for us is gratitude. Gratitude for the great gift of being here, being alive on this planet, in this solar system, this galaxy, in this 14 billion-year-old cosmos, and beyond. Amen. So I'd like to, as I say, here we are, day 6 of World Unity Week, and I'm just overwhelmed almost with how Teilhard's vision is living in this global event. And so I'd like to start with a couple of quotes Shamim is going to share for me. And the first one is from the Connection Field. I was on one of their gatherings a couple of days ago, and they are meeting every single day and sharing, just energetically connecting. And I'm telling you, you enter that room of the Connection Field and you feel it right away. It's just so amazing. Yeah. Can we go ahead and go to the next slide? Yeah. It's just our title here. So this came out, this is actually on their website. There is a Connection Field website. We are part of a greater unfolding, one organism made up of multiple parts, each of us affecting the greater whole. We have the potential to affect great change when we consider the global reach and game-changing wisdom available to us as we join together for a higher purpose. Right away, we hear Teilhard's everything that rises converges and union differentiates will come out. As it further says, we are a system far from equilibrium, and we are being drawn together into a new whole capable of transcending our current crisis and manifesting a future equal to our vast untapped potential. And then we went on to the Hollow Movement. It's okay, you can go on to the next one. The Hollow Movement is a unifying worldview for conscious collaboration, accessing the interconnectedness of all things in the universe. It is the rallying cry for radical collaboration, a social movement aligning each of our diverse, purpose-driven efforts with a unifying worldview. It is a call to unity, not uniformity. Guided by science and spirituality, the Hollow Movement invites you to join in this collective journey toward unity and social transformation. I mean, if that doesn't sound like Teilhard, I don't know what does. So you can take the screen down for a minute, Shamima, and I'll go to the third slide in just a minute. So I just want to set the context that Ben Bowler, who was inspired to create Unity Earth, which is a network of organizations, a global network of organizations. He's Australian and has Catholic roots. His father is a geologist and was very much inspired by Teilhard. And so Ben grew up on Teilhard and actually had a visit to Teilhard's grave when he had the inspiration to start Unity Earth. And Unity Earth is the organization of organizations that is putting World Unity Week together. The Deep Time Network is another one that's been mentioned already here. And as you see in these quotes, Teilhard's influence is reaching far. I mean, I think it's not far-fetched to say that Teilhard is the inspiration for World Unity Week. So I did want to go to a couple of short quotes of his, and I'm only sharing a couple of short ones. I once heard Richard Rohr say, Teilhard changed his life, but don't ask me to tell you anything he ever said. Teilhard wrote so much and so beautifully and richly that sometimes it's difficult for us to catch on to a quote. But Shamima, I have a couple of short quotes that I'd like you to put up now with slide number 3. And these are in addition to, oh, let's see, sorry, I missed one from this morning. Let's just, we can go to slide 3. So slide 3 is from this morning. There was a powerful film, new film, shown by Dr. David Corton. And this was a quote of his that was offered at the end. We humans are living beings, born of and nurtured by a living earth, itself born of and nurtured by a living universe, unfolding toward ever greater complexity, beauty, awareness, and possibility. Creation thus reveals its purpose, a quest to know itself and its possibilities through an epic journey of self-discovery and process of eternal learning and becoming. Now we go directly to Teilhard. Next slide, please. The true summons of the cosmos is a call to consciously share in the great work that goes on within it. To be in communion with becoming has become the formula for my whole life. And the last one, which is the quote that actually just enamored me of Teilhard when I was 17 years old. The age of nations is past. The task before us now, if we would not perish, is to build the earth. So as I say, I see honestly the entire work of, and this is an entirely volunteer work that's being done collaboratively, globally this week with World Unity Week. For me, it is Teilhard's vision in action. And I wanted to call in one particular aspect. This first quote here of his, the true summons of the cosmos is a call consciously to share in the great work that goes on within it. He wrote this as a young man, a young priest in the trenches of World War I. So he was absolutely embedded, if you will, in the struggle, because it's not just all pretty. And David Corton's film this morning is absolutely about the urgent call to action that we have in our world right now. And this is something that my most recent Teilhard book that I'm reading is a commentary on his Mass on the World. And in there, he really notices and lifts up the truth that our lives are an unavoidable mixture of positive growth and that fueling that almost really is challenge and struggle. And I did want to read one quote from The Phenomenon of Man that actually Matt pulled out recently in our Teilhard group to highlight this. So this is directly from Teilhard, where he's really lifting that out. He says, indeed, if we regard the march of the world not from that of its progress, but that of its risks and the efforts it requires, we soon see a particular type of cosmos in which evil appears necessary and abundantly, as you like, in the course of evolution, not by accident, which would not much matter, but through the very structure of the system. It is a doubly conjugated operation, which, like the scaling of a mountain or the conquest of the air, can only be effected objectively if it is rigorously paid for. And truly, when he was in the trenches of World War I, he was driven, if you will, he was inspired by the human effort around him, but certainly the pressure, if you will, of if I don't put these thoughts down now, who knows? I could be gone tomorrow. And so he did it for himself, but he also did it for others and for us. And I'd like to just close my comments now with moving to the end of Teilhard's life. Shamima, if you want to take that down so I can be a little more visible speaking here. Because as Ursula King, whose marvelous biography, which is more than a simple biography, wrote of him, Teilhard was really a person that was drawn to follow. She calls him a person whom the Lord had drawn to follow the road of fire. Actually, this is a quote, that he felt that he was drawn to follow the road of fire. And this calling led him away from the road of fusion and abandonment to the life of matter, but into a world of people and action, a world that needed kindling anew with fire, the transforming fire of love and union. This fire was fueled by his real living contact with an immense world, a world of fossils, bones, stones, rocks, plants, animals, places, people, friendships, and ideas. They all provided him with the concrete, tangible stuff of the universe that he then communed with and became part and parcel of his becoming. And Shamima's going to put a link in the chat for the account from the end of his life. And I can think of no better example or inspiration for us in the way that we might live our lives than the way Teilhard was himself at the end of his life. And I don't know that there are any other accounts like that of Jean Houston, who as a 14-year-old ran into Teilhard and began walking with him, not knowing who he was, in Central Park up until the very week of his death in New York City. And in that account, which you can read the full thing if you pick up that link there in the chat, you see him. That is absolutely what inspired her, that he would absolutely dropped to the ground to look at a caterpillar and then turned to her and asked her if she could feel herself to be a caterpillar. And you knew that he put that on himself as well. And he was inspired by the clouds, by the wind, and he was constantly calling her into that. And so now Jean Houston is still with us. She is 86 years old, and she actually spoke during World Unity Week. I heard her yesterday. They had pre-recorded her, but she said this, and I'll leave you with this. And having been inspired to be one of the drivers of the human potential movement throughout her life, and one has to see that that was absolutely seeded by her relationship with Teilhard. Here she is now in her 80s, and she says this: "We are high gamers. It's a game of endless discovery. We are cosmic creators, and we need to stop boring God." That wasn't an exact quote, but those are some little quips put together into one quote. So with that, I would love to turn the floor over and love to hear from some others, beginning with Matt, as to how Teilhard is inspiring your life and the lives of those around you.
So am I now up? Hello? I don't know what's going on.
Annie, you're muted.
I know, I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute. I couldn't get it to unmute. Yes, Matt, you're on.
Okay. I don't have any prepared notes because I wasn't quite sure what the zeitgeist of this meeting was going to be. So you'll have to be careful because my mind tends to, at my age, get off topic very easily. I can make Donald Trump sound like a Rhodes Scholar. But I'd like to open up with the idea of a hermeneutic. Normally, hermeneutics are used to describe how biblical passages are interpreted. But basically, all it is just the underlying position that you take when you make a statement. Teilhard offered an astounding hermeneutic in that everything could be better understood once it is put into the situation of evolution. This, of course, when it came out with it, when he first started writing and first started talking, was in opposition to the church's standard opposition to the idea that creation wasn't a one-time thing and that God would create through an evolutionary process. But once you take the position that Teilhard offers that says everything we see, everything that we experience is in a flow from the past to the future. That's the first point. And secondly, that this flow from the past to the future generally indicates a rise in essence. Teilhard's comment is, let's see if I can dig it out. We have greater being from closer union, and closer union leads to fuller being. And he sees that as an underlying essential process, which happens from the moment that the Higgs boson provides matter to the field of energy at the Big Bang, all the way up to the point where human beings, in association with each other, make themselves make themselves. Now, if we take this position, this hermeneutic that Teilhard offers, and apply it to everything we see, the universe begins to take on a slightly different hue to us. We all are subject to an immense amount of data, information. Of course, with AI, it gets worse because now Not only do we get to go on the internet and dig data out, AI will do it for us, warts and all, garbage in, garbage out. And so we are immersed in a flow of data about the world we see around us. And a lot of this data is very negative, partially because negative news sells better than positive news. So we need a way, a hermeneutic, to stand back from this flow that we find ourselves enmeshed in and understand this font of becoming that Teilhard posits in the universe. Everything that's happening is moving us forward. Even if it doesn't look like it, even if our news doesn't paint it as such, it's moving us forward. The problem is that we have to have faith in this process if we're going to move forward. We all decide the world's going to the dogs and we're going with it. Civilization stops and we will very quickly become extinct. So this idea of faith in the future is necessary for our continuation as a species. The problem is, where does this optimism come from that we're really moving in a positive direction? Where can we see it? Not so much in ideas as posited by this session, that we should all come together, we should all become aware of our closeness. These are all good things and they need to be done. But we also need to recognize that under our feet, even as we're unaware of it, we're moving forward. Poverty is decreasing in the world at a pace unprecedented in human history. For the first time in human history, organizations are coming together to try to figure out ways to reduce the human footprint on this planet. And if we don't reduce it, of course, we're not going to be around to find out how big the footprint is. World organizations are slowly moving towards improved or increased freedom of individuals. The freedom of individuals contribute then to the welfare of humans, which is possible to decrease poverty and also decrease our human footprint. If we know where to look for it in our news feed, for example, The Economist is a good example. The Economist magazine is a good example of such information. If we take the hermeneutic that underneath of all of the negative things that we see, all the things that hold us back from achieving what we think should be the perfect world are actually happening. In spite of the dystopian outlook on many of our news feeds, it's actually happening, and begin to recognize it. And when we begin to recognize it, not only does it free us up as far as our energy, the energy that we are capable of putting into building the earth, as Teilhard talks about, but also our personal joy. Life is definitely based on, as Teilhard said, struggling. Not because it's evil, but because we're not finished evolving yet. But one way to look at this is that it's just not that we're not just finished evolving, but the process of evolution is occurring whether we're aware of it or not. Becoming aware of it makes us better suited to deal with it. And this, to me, is what Teilhard offers. Teilhard offers a sense of optimism that we can tap into for our own personal joy, as well as the energy that we have to give to organizations such as we see today. The alternative is to give in to the despair that says we are unable to affect the outcome of the future, in which case then we are not taking advantage of the flow of energy that passes through us at every moment of our existence. Teilhard is often referred to as a mystic. And in doing so, the understanding that mysticism is only part of the human brain's functionality. The other is empiricism. Cynthia Bergio, who is one of the more Teilhardian influenced theologians out there, makes the case for the true movement towards achievement of the full potential of our humanity will come when the mystical operation of our brain and the empirical operation of our brain are balanced and equal. The intuitive operation, the mystical function, provides new things. All ideas do not come from what we think of, but what we perceive. All new ideas start out as a rumbling in the back of our head, which, if we're not conscious of it, will float away without us taking advantage of it. Taking advantage of it involves the ability to look at the apple falling from the tree and trying to figure out what causes this. How can it be expressed mathematically? So we go from the mystical observation of the apple to the expression of F equals ma, and Newton shows us how these two work together. Teilhard puts this into a much bigger perspective. The understanding of how the universe flows from the less complex to the more complex is repeated in us as we flow from the less integrated to the more integrated. Another example of this is the whole idea of the feminine. Teilhard writes very little about the feminine, but the idea that the female approach to consciousness is necessary for the future evolution of the world is unmistakable. But even more down to earth, when you consider that half of the humans on the planet are female, and the other half, of course, would be male, by finding ways to engage more of the feminine, more of the feminine brain power, we're simply adding to the volume. Can you imagine a future in which the world actually capitalizes on half of its brain power instead of, all of its brain power instead of all of male brain power, and maybe 30% or 20% of female? We don't know how to quantify that. But as we move forward, this movement towards more holism is what's going to make the universe on this planet, at least, continue to move towards a fuller sense of its potential. Are you muted, Annie? Annie, are you muted?
Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. Yes. Well, I'd love to open it up. I can just imagine some others might have something they'd like to add in here. You can raise your hand, or yep, Jeff, go right ahead.
Hello. Since you invited me, I might as well say something.
Please.
That I was listening to what Matt was saying and agreeing very wholeheartedly.
Jeff, yeah, great. I just want to make sure Shamima put you up on the screen. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just listening to what Matt was saying and agreeing wholeheartedly. It seems very clear that people are being brought together for purposes, intention purposes. And the spirit is definitely moving each and every one of those actions in many ways, for the good and the bad, as we know is necessary. Teilhard for me was different than it was for y'all. I didn't come along so soon, so he's kind of new to me. I'm not quite as well read or anything like that, but I had shared a mystical sense of the spiritual realm, this divine milieu that he describes is something I felt very much connected to most of my life. And a kinship, a brotherhood with him. And everything I read of his, it's like reading some personal connection or a message, or there's something personal to it. Each and every bit of it. It's just amazing to me. It's mind-boggling, actually, but it's been confirmation for me that I'm where I'm supposed to be at this point in my life. He's inspired me to want to start a community, to try to become self-sufficient, start treating the world good, planting, food forests, and trying to help train other people how to do it and live off of land and be self-sufficient. I don't know, there's so many things that I'm inspired by Teilhard, but honestly, his affirmation when he'd speak of the Lord, like with the Mass on the World, is what really touched me the most with Teilhard. It's his love for God, his trust in him, and his just absolute faith in the Holy Spirit to deliver what must be. That's the most beautiful thing I can think of that Teilhard's contributed to my life. It's just an affirmation for trusting in God for all things, especially the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit's just one of those entities that, with all its power, is so gentle in everything, good or bad. I would love to see where we'll be in 5 and 10 years. My anticipation of the future is hopeful despite some of the darkness in our world. I heard somebody say it doesn't take the whole of the universe, the whole of humanity to change the world. It just takes certain people to come together at the right times for the right things, for the right purpose, for the good of all, for the good of the other, and things can change. So
true. Yep.
With that hope that I know that my heart is there. I wish to be here today and share, just to let you all know that my actions, however limited, are here with us also. I don't have a whole lot I can say. I wish I had more to say.
Yeah, definitely. We've got 4 hands up, so we're going to move on to someone else. But I so appreciate what you shared there about Teilhard having encouraged you in your life. Olivia, welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I'm late because I'm in recovery and I had to go to boot camp from my knee replacement. But I hope this is recorded and that Hasina will be available, because Annie, you know that what you brought you and me together a couple of years ago was our love of Teilhard de Chardin. And thank you, Jeff, for those words, because I find that during this week, I go from huge frequency uplifting and vibrations. If anybody was on last night for dear Kristen's, Rain Shine concert, it was unbelievable, and you can get it on her Bandcamp. It was sublime, it was ethereal. And then there was a wonderful movie with David Corton, but my heart was breaking. And I think one of the things that I find is that our brains can also go into a kind of shutdown when we have such, as you were saying, Matt, if I understood correctly, there's so much negativity in the world, and the media capitalizes on that because we get addicted to it. And yet I find that I go to Teilhard when I need to lift my spirits. And one of the things about him, as you were saying, Jeff, is that he's always held this bigger picture, and he points the arrow. He doesn't accept that we're not evolving. You know, he says we are a noosphere, and we have become a noosphere. You know, it's really exciting. In our lifetime, we have become a noosphere with the internet and with things like this. Mike, and I love that you said the feminine, because I was involved in the Cosmic Vedana and on Monday, if some of you saw that, and because I felt it was so important to raise that voice during this week. And the other thing that I think is important, though, is that even though Teilhard didn't say the feminine per se, he was talking about partnership. And I think that's the important thing, is that it's not the women's movement again. It's really about the partnership between the feminine and the masculine, in holy partnership, in caring partnership, in active partnership. And now I just want to ask one more thing. What do you think Teilhard would think about ceremony? Because I find that ceremony is very important in my life, from my indigenous, my First Nation teachers. And I think he would think that that was a way of lifting us and experiencing the mystical, but also God, or whatever you want to call it, the great mystery, as the Cherokee call it. So I wonder, what do you think he would have felt about ceremony, Annie and everybody?
I just, want to real quickly say that, his Mass on the World was really his highest form of prayer. He really saw our work in the world and the sufferings, because he equated our work with the bread, being the bread of life, the Eucharistic bread. But the sufferings are the wine, the blood, and that it takes both, as I mentioned, and Matt has brought out. So we could definitely talk about that a bit more if we have more time, but we'll probably.
So you're saying that's ceremony.
That's ceremony, yeah. That was, when he was in the deserts of China. Actually, it began in the trenches of World War I, when he had no bread or wine. But he said that is the true bread and wine that is consecrated for us. That's our food, our spiritual food. There's more, I'm sure we could say, but.
Well, the idea of the ceremony, of course, suggests that possibly more than one person involved. That's one part of the ceremony. Teilhard introduces the idea of a psychism. Psychism, where more than one person gets together to address, think about, express some concept. And in his psychism, you have the idea of Jesus saying, where two or more are gathered in my name, I am there. The Christ in Teilhard is the underlying agency that affects the increase of evolution towards the person. So in a ceremony, this psychism is more than just the number of people there. If you have 3 people there, you may have the ideas of 100, because they build on each other. E pluribus unum, as you see on your $1 bill. So the idea of a ceremony is anything that brings people together in order to extend the individual fullness to the fullness of the group. So I'll suggest that as a way that the ceremony is important to human evolution.
Yeah, if I could just add, I think ceremony also was important to Teilhard personally. He didn't take his duties to the Lord lightly. He tried to hold Mass even when he was by himself, and wrote that beautiful Mass on the World to show us that how much how very important it is. That's all. I think it's very, very important that we uphold those kinds of traditions, celebrations, really.
Yeah, to celebrate life, absolutely. He would applaud that. Suzanne.
Well, hi, everybody.
Yeah.
So listen, I guarantee you that all of you will get turned on by reading what I've been posting on Substack, and I put it in the chat. It's primarily, Brian Swim is all over it. What I am looking at is how can we change the world fast? Evolution would do it if we're around long enough, but if we don't get to it quickly, we may not be around, by the time evolution would have brought us to this place. What I'm working with Brian on is getting the universe story, the Teilhard story, to be universally accepted. Change our story, we change the world. If we think we're sinners, we struggle to fix things. If we think we're saints, we are gloriously happy to be serving our evolution and our world. I think it's the key. There's so much effort to fix this and fix that and fix the other. Well, go underneath all of it to what's causal to things that don't work. And it's the way we see humanity. We see ourselves. We see ourselves differently. We will create a different world. There's so much material, not so much material because I like 10 or 12 posts. But in those posts, there's so much juicy material about all of this. You won't find that anywhere else. There's a lot of plans for the blueprints for the future. There's a lot of explanation about how we got here, where we are. There's nothing about how can we get from here to there quickly. And that's what my Substack's all about. And it's all built on Teilhard via Brian Swim. So, okay, it's my
Wonderful.
offering.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Please check it
Thank
out.
you for sharing that with us. Yes. David.
Yeah, hi. I realized after the fact that I raised my hand that this was being recorded, and but it's too late. I think basically I'd like Matt to sort of, if you had any feedback on the rise of authoritarian movements around the world. They're actually quite strong at the moment, and my feeling is that these movements are a reaction to disintegration of our systems as we know them and disintegration of the world around us. And so they're symptoms. And I just would like Matt's feedback on any feelings he has about these authoritarian movements, including the GOP becoming an authoritarian party here in the U.S.
Okay.
Not that that's a small question.
Trivial subject. Okay, I got a couple of thoughts on that. The first one is that if you look in the West, at least, the holy books of the West, primarily the Bible and the religious system that has evolved out of that, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, you find two big threads. One thread is that assumes that there is an underlying evil in the world, sort of capital expressed best by Luther, who basically said humans are piles of shit covered by Christ. And on the other side, you've got the religious thought that humans are products of God and God is in some way a loving father. These two basic perceptions flow around the world. On the one hand, you've got the idea that humans are capable of forming a government, and that the plurality of belief by the human masses is good enough to guide the state. That's basically Thomas Jefferson, who basically pulls his ideas from his own personal Bible, which is the story of Jesus without the miracles. And on the other hand, you've got the belief that humans are totally incapable of moving towards greater welfare, human welfare, which you find in the more authoritarian states. That's two diametrically opposed points of view. In general, if you look at the recent history after the Second World War, you find that the increase of democratic societies, which are the first type, which assume that there is some value in the human that can be trusted to move society forward, that these societies have been on the increase. By the same token, those societies that have been on the increase, as documented, for example, by a book called Progress, show that if humans are allowed freedom and whose laws of interaction are properly structured, human welfare increases. Poverty goes down, life expectancy goes up, medical and technology increases. And generally, the West, and that most of these Western style structures and their products, their fruits, are bleeding into the East on the one hand, and on the other hand, as they do, the welfare in these societies, gross national product, for example, is going up much faster than it did as the West evolved democratic systems. On the other side of the coin, of course, you've got these highly restrictive organizations where the state makes the decisions and the humans have got to live with it. In China, we see some breaking of this mold. Or at least about 20 years ago, it began to break. And as it did, China began to modernize as far as the advantages of the state to the individual. And as a result, they've got a sort of a mixture between the authoritarian and the relative freedom of the individuals. Now, if you look at what The Economist has to say today, and I agree with it, that trend seems to be changing. So it's hard to figure out where it's going to go. Is it going to dissolve and go back to the way it was under Mao Zedong, or is it going to improve? And individuals, as the middle class evolves, will assert more influence over society. Then, of course, you've got in the middle the Islamic states where humans are totally under the gun of some religious organization or the other. That's the most frightening because it kind of blends the beliefs that came out of Christianity and Judaism into beliefs that are totally antithetical to Christianity and Judaism. And I don't know what it's going to take for those societies to move, because they are definitely not evolving into democratic modes. So I guess in an attempt to pull all of those loopy observations
we're at the top of the
together,
hour, Matt. So yeah.
Okay. I'll say, I think it's getting better, but I can't be sure.
Well, Hasina, we've got one hand up, but I don't know if we're already over the hour. So I feel like we should probably move on unless you feel like it's okay.
Go ahead. I feel like it's just my session after this, And I think we're all learning from each other now, and there is wisdom. So when you feel it's a stop, then that's fine.
That's very gracious. Thank you. Jim, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I was in the Tonkin Gulf when some friends of mine sent me a Phenomena of Man and the Fordham proceedings. And I went into the chaplain and said, "Father, look what I got." And he said, "Oh, my son, he's very controversial. Here, let me give you this biography of Abbot blah blah." And I knew at that point, in order to understand Chardin, I had to leave the church. And I was particularly taken in by the concept of cosmogenesis and hyperpersonalization, which I think is what the previous speaker was saying about the kind of grouping that sort of is similar to the quantum energy field in a way that's becoming popular in psychological healing. Could you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I was waiting to see if you had something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
Thank you for sharing
I
that.
can't remember the word he said. Phyto. I've never heard that word before. What was it? Phytosis. Referring to the collective. When one or more gather in my name, I will be there. It was a
Psychasm.
Say again.
Psychasm.
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 Yeah. And so I'm thinking, because I've run across groups now that are trying to get away from I into weism, that this is kind of what he was presaging, and that the younger generation that now has to save the earth because we older people have not done a good job are almost forced into this level of consciousness.
Andy, how do you put your hand
Wonderful.
up?
Thank you for sharing, Jim.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For the benefit of the recording, I will just read rapidly what I've put in the chat. And I mean, to me, Teilhard is my exemplar of being a cosmo-ecozoic. I was conscious of the evolving universe. Maybe in his time, he didn't put a date on it. I mean, like 14 billion years as we are aware now. Yet also he was very fully human, albeit conscious of being a spiritual being, having a human experience. Since 1973, I got a book of Teilhard in my hand, The Divine Milieu. And that, the two words, divine milieu, stopped me in my tracks, you could say. At that time, I was in a small seminary with the intention of becoming a priest. The same person who sent me Teilhard, the Divine Milieu, also sent me Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. You can imagine the alchemy of the two. I'm still trying to sift what from this alchemic reaction of the two in me. Anyway, now the Divine Milieu to me is my personal divine center, and also that each person is at the center of being at the center of the divine. All of creation, animate and inanimate, is sacred and of the divine. So with reverential humility, we can be each empowered by love. As Teilhard said, the discovery of the power of love will be akin to the second discovery of fire for human beings. So, I mean, I'm simply trying to be simply human, acknowledging my spiritual origin, you could say. So I wish you each peace, joy, and all good. in the tradition of Saint Francis of Assisi. Thank you.
Thank you, Tex.
Annie, I'd like to comment on what a gentleman said a minute ago about having to leave the church to read Teilhard. I'll make a note that the current and the last two popes didn't feel the need to leave Catholicism to agree with Teilhard. I don't think Teilhard is something that's antithetical to Catholicism. I think Teilhard offers a way for Catholicism to become more relevant to human affairs and more relevant to individual growth. I think there's a huge amount of wisdom in Catholicism. I consider myself to be a recovering Catholic. On the one hand, I have to recover from some of the baloney that I learned when I was in grade school. And on the other hand, I believe that Teilhard is helping me to recover the basic truths that lie in traditional Catholic teaching.
Well, and it's true. He never left.
That's right.
He never gave up his priesthood, and he never left the church. So he absolutely saw that seed of possibility and truth, and and the greater vision of Christ and drawing all things to himself, the cosmic Christ, which is non-religion connected. But Hasina, thank you so much for your graciously allowing us to go over time here.
Well, thank you.
If I could just say one more thing before we go.
Yes,
just Matt, you made me think of it when you brought up the church, and it's not just the church, it's the governments, like even our own United States government. It has an agenda to stay in power. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I hope it's not a surprise to nobody. It's not much different than the Catholic Church, the papacy trying to stay in power. When the Church of God, or Teilhard, believed, the Catholic Church, the hierarchy should be always first the Spirit. I believe Teilhard would agree wholeheartedly with that. And somehow or another, we need to learn how to follow that, what's truest and deepest in each and every one of us. And that's in the spirit of Teilhard. And I give that to you guys. Much love. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Becoming, as he was just all about us becoming, as Jean, his student, reminds us, it's all a high game. We are all high gamers. She said that she played with him. She said she played the game with him, the game, which is to be in communion with all that is, and for that to be a part of our individual becoming and our collective becoming. So thank you each for being here. It would be lovely to go on for another hour and bring some other voices in, but I really appreciate everyone who has contributed, even energetically here. It all matters. And thank you to Tom and Hasina and Shamima so much for holding space for this conversation.
Yes,
Brilliant.
thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Many thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay.